Biggest thing about Prescott, Arizona is that we are a mile high, so we have high altitude here. And sunshine is so intense, and we have no humidity in the summertime until the monsoons hit. And this year, I mean, the humidity was even extra high. Usually the humidity comes in when we get the storms, and then it blows back out, and then we're dry again until the next storm comes through. But the humidity kind of stayed at that 30–40% all summer long once they started. And we had fungal issues like crazy. The bugs were amazing. Grasshoppers, I mean, I'm seeing grasshoppers that are like 5 inches long, and it's like, oh my gosh. So we had a great season. The weather was almost perfect. I mean, we had some hot spells. We had lots of rain, which is always good. So gardens did great. I think tomato crops, I was hearing from everybody, mine was especially good this year. So it was a great season. So we're going to start with the evergreens. Like I said, hollies, this holly will get about 12–15 feet if you let it get to be that size. They make a great plant for putting in a pot by your front door. It is a shady plant. It doesn't like the full sun. So you want to put it in an area where it can get some morning sun, but that hot afternoon sun is the biggest thing. And when I talk about hot afternoon sun, that's in the summertime. So if it gets sunshine during the winter, that's okay. It's that hot afternoon sun in the summertime that we need to be careful of. And this time of year, obviously the sun has changed positions. So if you're new, if you're looking at the summer sun, it's about 10 minutes backwards. So if you put the sun at the 12 o'clock position, go back to 10 till, and that's where your summer sun is going to be for the summertime. Beautiful plant. This guy is a combo plant, so there is male and female on it. So you do get the berries with only having one plant. It used to be that we had to get 2 plants in order to get the pollination, to get the pretty berries. This is a great holiday plant as well, and we'll go into some of that later on in the program. We'll start with, this is a Black-Hilled spruce. Black-Hilled spruce is a more green spruce. A lot of people will come in here and ask me, well, I want something more green in a spruce form. And this is one of them. It will get about 30–40 feet tall and about 20 wide. Going to grow about 8 inches a year in the scheme of things. When you go to plant, it's just like everything else. We're going to dig the hole twice as wide as the bucket that it's in, and just as deep. 2/3 natural soil and 1/3 premium mulch. We still haven't got our bag, so we're still using this. It's our mulch in this bag, so it's the same thing. We just ran out of our bags. So great tree, beautiful color. A little bit smaller needles than the blue spruce, but a great tree. This tree here is a Wichita blue juniper. Wichita blue junipers are going to get about 10–12 feet tall, 4–6 wide, very drought tolerant. The Spartan juniper is kind of a brother to this, and is green, same height and width. So if you're looking for that privacy and not such a tall tree, this is an ideal choice. There's also a moonglow juniper that we'll have in the springtime that gets a little bit bigger and a little bit taller, topping out at 20 feet tall and about 8–10 feet wide. Great little tree. Alberta spruce. Alberta spruces are one of our favorites, small tree. Very, very slow growing. It's going to grow about 2 or 3 inches a year. So it's great for your front yard if you have small pillars that you're trying to accent. They will top out about 8 feet tall, 3 feet wide. The only thing with these guys is that they do tend to get spider mites in the summertime. So about a couple times a week, I would just take a hose and spray it down. All the needles, just really get rid of anything that's in there. Spider mites have a very easy to see symptom. You will have a spot of brown. They kind of do circles. And so if you start seeing that, really start spraying it. Or, once we start warming up in May, just get into that habit of a couple times a week, just hosing down your tree. These also make excellent Christmas trees. So I will get back to that in a minute. This is my favorite pine tree that we carry. This is an Oregon green pine. I love the bristlecone needles on this. This in the snow looks just like a Christmas tree. It branched all the way up and is spectacular. It is a more narrow tree, so it gets about 25 feet tall and about 15, it'll max out before 15 feet. So it's more narrow. So if you have those smaller yards, you can easily put one of these in there. This here is a blue ice Arizona cypress. Blue ice has this gorgeous color that's silvery gray. Smells amazing. Would make a great Christmas arrangement if you wanted to do some trimming. This tree here will get about 25 feet tall and about 10-15 feet wide. His cousin, I guess, is the regular Arizona cypress, which is more green. It doesn't have these longer needles, more like a juniper look to them. And they are fast growing as well, but they are larger. The regular Arizona cypress will get about 30 feet tall and about 20 wide. Yes, sir.
Yes, what was the name of that?
This one here, it's an Oregon green pine.
Oregon green pine.
Yes.
And I have a question. With all these evergreens, what's the pH requirement?
His question was...
They tell me the soil needs to be acidic.
Right. So his question was about the pH for these pines. And so being new to this area, the pH all over town, it doesn't matter whether you're in Chino, Thumb Butte, Dewey, our pH is high, skyrocketing high. So sulfur is a necessity. And if you use our all-purpose plant food, it has the sulfur in it. So Ken formulated this just for this area because it does have that sulfur in it, and it will help keep that level at where the plants need it. So that's why we encourage you to fertilize 3 times a year with the 744. Yeah.
You mentioned fertilize. I was just reading the other day, this is not the time to fertilize anything.
So you are in Prescott, Arizona, so it's a little different. A lot of other places, you can spit out a seed and it will grow. We need to feed our soil all the time because there's nothing living in there. There's no nutrients. Well, what nutrients are there? Trees and plants can't access it because of that pH level. So we need to feed and help the plants that way. So that's why we feed in October. We feed in October because if you feed earlier, you can get new growth. And then when we get cold, your new growth will die off.
Yeah.
So we wait until the end of October. Typically, we don't get that new growth push unless we have wonderful days like this and the plants say, okay, we're going to be nice for the next 5 days and we're going to do something. So a little bit of new growth dieback won't hurt your plant. Just cut it off and it'll be fine. It's just one of those things that happens sometimes. With the fertilization, we do that 4 times a year for our evergreen plants. So we fertilize Easter, 4th of July, Halloween, and then the evergreens do get a New Year's Eve or New Year's application, or quarterly if you're a financial person, whatever works for you. So that way we can keep it all, and it's slow release, so it doesn't burn. So it takes time for that fertilizer to get down into the root system where it can be activated. So that's kind of how that works. Okay. This little guy here, I'm sorry. I brought this guy up and I'll get him out of the way. He was just so pretty. He's not an evergreen, but he is an Iceberg Rose. Smells gorgeous. If you guys get a chance, take a whiff of this guy because he's amazing. He's a shrub rose, and we'll get in that 4 to 4 foot size range. Beautiful white, spectacular color. This is a baby blue spruce. Baby blue spruce is one of those more narrow trees for the smaller yards. He will get about 40 feet tall and about 10 wide. Really great tree for smaller space. Growth on this guy is probably 8 inches a year. Kind of a moderate grower. Most of your blue spruces are going to be slower growers. Sometimes people will ask me on the color of the spruces, how do I get that blue spruce color? And then you just add some aluminum sulfate, and that actually adds sulfur, but it's that aluminum that really pushes that blue tint to them. So that's how that works. This guy here is a Colorado Fat Albert blue spruce. Nice thing about Fat Albert is he takes after his name, so he'll get 10 or 20 feet tall and 20 wide. So he's kind of a fat, pudgy tree. Slower grower, again, about 8-10 inches a year. Really pretty tree. A lot of your blue spruces around here are the Fat Alberts. This guy here is the Austrian Pine. Austrian pines are one of the fastest growing trees around. Austrian pines are going to grow in that 12 to 18 inches a year once they get established. 30 feet tall, about 20, 25 feet wide. Again, they're one of those trees that limbs from the bottom up. Really pretty tree. Very, very drought tolerant. Your pines are, actually all your evergreens are. So you don't have to water as often as you think you do. Even though we're in the high desert, if you are watering your established plants more than once a week, as long as you're watering deep enough, you only have to water once a week. Yes?
What do they look like when you water too much? Do they get brown on the inside?
Good question. Her question was what happens when you start watering too much? Basically, all your trees, plants, all of that thing, one of the symptoms is going to be yellowing inside. So one of our troubleshooting questions is if you have yellowing inside, it's usually too much water. If it's on the outside, it's not enough. Outside and the top is not enough water. So it's kind of one of those things you can take a look at your plants and say, what's going on? And that's kind of when we start asking questions. Yes, sir.
I'd like to add, excuse me, I'd like to add on with the watering. Good point about the browning inside. Because of a lot of rain we had this season, you might notice that in some of the trees.
Yeah.
But my question is, you talk about deep watering and watering. We're now in the winter season. For instance, we've had so much rain this summer. I have not, my green fern, I have not been watering for at least 4 or 5 weeks because the moisture is still coming out of the ground.
Okay.
But my question is, in the winter, do we water rather once every 2 weeks, or do we do a deep watering every 3 weeks or something?
Okay. So his question was winter watering, which is a great question. So winter watering, I think I was talking to this gal here earlier. So watering is really hard for us to say, this is exactly what you're going to do at your place. We have so many different conditions, soil conditions. Some of us have heavy clay. Some of us have decomposed granite, and it drains really fast. So you need to check your plants. So what I'm going to tell you is that basically this time of year, minus this wonderful week we've had, I have been watering my trees about every 2 weeks right now. I have very, very heavy clay soils, and my evergreens are doing just fine. So if your soil, get a piece of rebar, a long screwdriver or something like that, pop it into the soil around your tree and your drip line. So make sure if you have a drip system that your drip lines are out where your branches are. If your branches are out here, your drip line should be out here. It shouldn't be at the trunk because your feeder roots are way out here. So that's where you want to pop your rebar into the soil and pop it in a good 8 inches and pull it out. I like rebar because it has a little twisties that it'll pull out the soil. And if it's moist, don't water. Even if it's been 4 or 5 weeks, if it's moist, don't water because the tree has as much as it's going to need. If it's dry, definitely water. And like I said, if you're in that decomposed granite area, you might be still watering twice a week or once a week. It just depends on how your soil drains. So speaking of water, I'm getting off topic, but we'll get back to it. There are 4 watering seasons here. So we are fixing to go into that winter watering season, which we recommend every 2 weeks watering. How do you do that when your irrigation system is turned off? Either it depends on your system. If your system drains or has a drain, you can turn it back on, water your plants, and then let it drain, turn it back off. If you have a system that needs to be blown out, you might just want to drag out a hose on a warm day and water your plants. So when I say deep watering, that means thoroughly watering your plant. And basically what we kind of try to figure out as far as your watering goes, for every foot of height, you're going to water 1.5 gallons to 2 gallons of water every time you water. As your tree grows and gets wider, you're going to add to that. So it kind of gives you an idea how to do that. Your bigger trees should be getting 45 gallons. You know, if they have a 25-foot stretch and it's 20 feet tall, it should be getting 45 gallons to 50 gallons every time you water. So it puts things all in perspective. How do you water on one system? You just add spaghetti tubes and bigger emitters. So your shrubs get 2 or 3 gallons as they need it. Your trees get 25 gallons as they're needed. So that's how you do that. So winter watering is every 2 weeks. Like I said, it might not be exactly for that, but it's just kind of a rough estimate. If you're concerned, check your soil. March, so December through March is kind of winter. March through the end of April is the next cycle, so to speak, and we're going to go back to that once a week watering. Obviously, if we get a good rainstorm, snowstorm, we're going to not water so much. Summertime hits usually mid-May, and our heat spikes, our winds kick up, and everything dries out. So that's when we're into that summertime mode. If you're in decomposed granite, you might be watering 2 or 3 times a week. If you're in heavier clay, sometimes it's 2 times a week. I usually do my smaller stuff, my perennials and smaller shrubs, twice a week. down in Dewey. My trees are still on that once a week time frame because they just hold that soil moisture in. Fall, once monsoons kick in, September, usually our temperatures go down, the sun changes, our days get shorter. We're into that once a week time frame. So 4 times a year our watering changes. So keep that in mind. A lot of us, we kind of stopped watering during the monsoon season. And then once the monsoon stopped, we kept watering summertime levels, and that didn't help our pine trees. So we're seeing a lot of that yellowing in the trees as we go through it. Did I answer your question? Okay. All righty. Austrian Pine. Vanderwolf. Vanderwolf is one of your pet-friendly trees. Really soft needles, not pokey at all. Has a two-toned effect on its needles, silvery and green. Beautiful tree, will get about 20, 25 feet tall, about 10, 15 feet wide, and really, really pretty tree. This one, I kind of have a love-hate relationship, and Ken will hate me for saying this, but if you are over water, this is not the tree for you, because it does not like water. It can go south very, very quickly if it gets too much. So you got to be really, really careful with water on this guy. This one here is a Deodorant Cedar. Beautiful tree. California Christmas trees is what they called it when I first got here. He will get about 40 feet tall and about 25 feet wide. Real fast growing tree. 12, 18 inches a year. So if you need some privacy and have the space, this is an excellent tree for you. Not a lot of diseases or anything like that with this tree. It is a great tree, easy to grow. Lastly, I got a blue Atlas cedar over here. Kind of a unique shape to this. We do have some serpentine of these, or it's a weeping serpentine tree, which is really, really cool. I meant to bring one up. But this guy will get in at 25, 30 foot. It just has this really pretty blue spruce look to it, but it is a cedar. Okay. Any questions about evergreen trees? Pinyon pines. Pinyon pines, I just have really tiny ones. I didn't bring one up. We have 2 different types of pinyon pines here. We have the single needle pinyon, which is right over here. And after I'm done, I can show you those. Or I have some like 2 gallon, and they're about this tall. Pinyon pines are very slow growing. They will very, very drought tolerant, and you will start getting your pinyon nuts in about 10 years. Any other questions about, yeah?
Muco pine.
Muco pines. So muco pines are very slow growing evergreens that are more shrub-like. They kind of tend to get into that 3 to 4 foot range. One thing to remember is that even though they say they'll get 3 to 4 feet, things just don't stop growing when they get to a certain height. They do continue to grow. So you can easily pinch them off, keep them to the size that you want. So really great tree, very drought tolerant. We've had a lot of people bring pictures of those in as well that have turned yellow in the inside because of all the rain that we had.
Is there a dwarf and a regular one? Or?
Yeah, so Muco Pines are several different varieties. The slow mound Muco Pine tends to be the smallest one, and that one says it stays in that 3 to 4 foot as well. Has more limbs to it, so it's more compact and dense. than your Mugos. Mugos can almost look like this.
Yes, that's weird.
as
I
they
didn't thinking that's what it was, but no.
Yeah. So they're great. In that line, there's also a dwarf globe spruce that will get in that 4x4 size range. But there was a gal in here yesterday that said theirs was 8 feet tall. So they do continue to grow, but they're very slow growing. So it's usually like 20 or 30 years that you get that size range out of them. Trying to think of other trees that I have that I didn't bring up here. But now's the time to get them planted. It gives them some extra time to get roots out while we do have this nice weather. We also have March through April to keep going in that before our May, June heat wave hits. Evergreens do not like to be planted in that summertime time frame. So if at all possible, get them in the ground as soon as possible, or wait until after July and the monsoons are here and then plant your evergreens. Your deciduous stuff is easier to monitor as far as your watering and all of that stuff because it'll turn. You'll see symptoms faster than you will with the evergreens. Evergreens usually take about a month to show issues that are going on with it. So kind of keep that in mind. So I'm going to kind of segue into holiday. We're going into the Christmas season. I hate to say that because it's kind of early still. But as this is our last class, we want to kind of segue into that. So we do sell live trees, living trees. We do not do cut trees any longer. We figured we were plant people. Why cut down a perfectly good tree if we can plant trees after Christmas and you guys can enjoy them in the house? So there is a process of using living trees as a Christmas tree. So the first thing you need to know is that they can only be in your house for Christmas for 7 to 10 days. So if you want something longer, you're going to have to look elsewhere or change your plans a little bit and get a live tree out of it. When you take your Christmas tree home and get ready for the holiday, you're going to put your tree in a close proximity to your house so it stays warmer. We're trying to get it used to being in the house. We don't want to take it from, 30 degrees, 40 degrees outside to your 70-degree warm house. You're going to shock your tree. So we kind of move it closer and closer to your house, and then we finally bring it in that 7 or 10, before Christmas. Once you get it into your house, you want to make sure that it is away from your fireplace, any heater vents, any sunny windows, because it will dry out in there. Make sure that you put something underneath your tree so you can continue to water it in your home, because you're going to need to do that to keep it moist, because it will dry out faster inside than it would being outside. Ice cubes work really well on the top of the trees because it slowly melts in and keeps the roots nice and moist. Decorate it just like you would a normal Christmas tree. And then once you take off your decorations after Christmas, you're going to kind of do the same steps going out. So you'll put it on your back porch or in the garage or, somewhere, carport, something like that. So it doesn't go from your hot house to your cold outside. So we kind of work it in and then work it out. And that way we don't go through the shock. And then what you're going to do is you're going to plant it like a normal tree. So pick your spot out and enjoy it as you need to. A lot of people will also decorate it on your porch and then just kind of wheel it in as once you're ready for it. So that's kind of how we do our holiday trees. On a good note, Christmas cactuses will be here. Some will be here next week. And then our big shipment will be here the week of Thanksgiving, right, Ken? Poinsettias will be in as well in that time frame. So we will be ready to go for all your holiday decorations. Any other questions? Like I said, this is going to be a quick, easy class, but I'm here for you if you have questions.
When the evergreens have brown on the inside, I don't know if it's quite yellow or brown, it's more brown and they're brittle, you can put your hand there and they just fall off. Is that not enough water?
So it is still, her question was if they're brown instead of yellow, is it still too much water? So without asking you all my questions, I don't know, but most likely it is, you didn't see it yellow and then it just turned brown. So, and the other thing, it is fall, so trees normally have some die off at this time. They have to cast the needles off so they can get some new ones in the spring. So it just kind of depends on where it's at and how much it is. And if you're watering properly, it might not be overwatering. It might be just normal winter color.
Shedding.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
I have some Junipers, and also I recollect the Deodorant, larger ones.
Mm-hmm.
I have a problem, the top tip was just gone dead.
Okay. So he's got some junipers and some Deodorant cedars that the top has died off. So my guess is at some point they did not get enough water because your top is the last thing to actually get your water and nutrients. So as you water, you need to add more water to whatever you're at. You know, if you're watering 10 gallons, I would do 15, just to make sure it gets up there.
Well, that a dead, it's gone, not
Yeah.
going to grow anymore.
So your tips, and it kind of depends on how big your tree is, but trees are pretty smart, so to speak. If you have a tree like this, and this is a deodorant, some of our deodorants, when they're young, they tend to be floppy. They're gangly like teenagers, you know, they haven't quite grown into their skin. So if you lose this branch here, you can actually train it to be your new leader. And you can do this with any type of tree, whether it's deciduous or evergreen. You can train a new leader for your tree. Sometimes you'll see in our deciduous trees, the top has been cut off and there's a new one setting up. And people ask me, well, what happened? Well, my guess is sometime between where our vendors got it and the truck, the top got snapped off, or something happened to it or whatever. But they have already trained a new leader to be up there. And all you need is a leader to show the tree where to go. And that's kind of how that works. And it's really easy to do. It's kind of like the serpentine blue atlas cedar that is on a trunk like this. And if you want to see it, it's right as you go down into the lower house. I've got 2 of them right now. But it's just been trained to go like this. And then as that, you can either let it go and it'll serpentine down onto your soil, or you can train it to go back up and continue the turns that you have. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that because Austrian Pine sometimes does funny things on the top. It comes up with 5 or whatever branches,
Mm-hmm.
and if you, and some of them there's 2
Yeah.
wanting to get up,
Right.
and I've snapped the one to make the one the leader.
Right. So he has an Austrian pine that has 5 or 6, and a lot of them will do that. Yeah. So, get the bow out of the way. So basically he has all of this stuff here. And then, so this died on him. So this one, he trained to become his leader. You see that? So this one didn't do so well. And like I said, the tree will figure out what's going on and will do it yourself, or you can help it along. Usually if you help it along it's easier and you can get better results that way.
You get a nicer tree, otherwise it's gonna come out.
Yeah, sometimes they need some help getting
Yeah.
straight. We kind of all need that every once in a while. Yeah.
When the pine needles do turn yellow and brown, is it best to remove them and leave them on the ground as mulch or to?
Either way, her question was, if your needles do turn yellow, is it better to leave it on the ground or get rid of it? Pine needle mulch, people use it a lot, which is fine. It can get pretty dense, so it kind of depends on what's going on with your tree. If your tree has any sort of, usually pine needles aren't so bad, but if you're using leaves as a mulch and they're deciduous, make sure you didn't have any fungal issues that are going to decompose back into the soil, because that's an issue, especially this year. I've seen so many different trees, and trees that haven't had, normally don't have issues, had issues this year. Redbuds had fungal issues. Maples, horrible fungal issues. So it was just a bad year for fungal issues. Yes, sir.
To add to that question,
Okay.
pine needle, when it drops, does it make acidic pH? What's the pH of that? Will it make the
Now you're
soil
getting
acidic?
complicated for me. I can't remember. I thought it actually helped lower it, but I might be wrong on that. So
Okay.
let me find out and I'll
I'm thinking
get back
it
to you.
will, but
Yeah.
because it's a pine.
Yeah.
I heard
Yeah.
the opposite, I think.
But let me find out for you. Maybe we can answer that in a newsletter or something. Yes, sir.
That's a juniper, right? The one in the middle?
This guy?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For us allergy people, does it bite those little things when you first open? And
So for your juniper people, the good thing to know is these are kind of created. So they're not like the alligator junipers that you do this and they poof and smoke.
Yes.
So all trees have pollen of some sort. But these, if you hit this, it doesn't turn into smoke cloud like your alligator junipers.
what was the name of that again?
This is a Wichita blue juniper.
Thank
you. So yeah. Yeah.
Any of them more deer resistant than others? 'Cause where I am, the deer will eat pine trees.
So his question was on deer resistance. So most of your evergreens are typically resistant. But one thing to remember is we have been very drought in this serious drought for the last 2 years. So they haven't had a lot to munch on. That being said, if you are planting new trees and deer are in your area, I would definitely fence it off, at least for the beginning time frame, just because it's a new toy and they will want to munch. Like I said, typically they don't eat the evergreens, spruce trees, pine trees, junipers, and I've heard them munch on them, but usually it's just a bite or two and then they stop. So it kind of goes with the territory that we're in. Hopefully with the monsoon that we've had, we shouldn't have that problem this year so much, but I mean, we've been dry since, middle of September, so.
Yeah, they ate my hollies down like a quarter the size of what they were.
Okay.
They do.
So deer are desperate, so there are sprays that you can use. Fencing is the best, but it has to be pretty high, or get yourself a dog and let him be outside a lot.
I'm gonna try some motion lights.
You talk about pollination. The junipers and Arizona cypress, etc. Are there males and females? And which one pollinates them? Do you need a pollinator, or can you have non-pollinators?
So his question was on pollination on your junipers. So yeah, there are male and female trees. So for instance, this Arizona cypress, this is a female tree because she has the berries.
She has the berries.
Yes.
All right.
So if it does not have the berries and is at a certain age, it's probably a male. So yeah.
When you buy, can you see what it is and just get females? and
We can
whatever?
guess, but typically not so much.
Look at
I wish I
Sorry,
would,
sorry.
because I've had that question. I just want a female.
Yeah.
I don't care. It's just a female. But yeah, unless they have berries and such, you really,
Depends,
yeah. What a great question.
It's a good one, yeah.
Oh. All right, yeah.
For the fungus, do you put copper sulfate on, like your deciduous or boxwood?
Yeah, so her question was about fungal issues. Copper sulfate is a great fungicide. The Revitalize is also a great fungicide, so either one. Right now, with the cooler temperatures, and depending on how much leaf you have, most of them are gone. What I would make sure that you do with your trees is make sure all of that dead stuff is out of there so it doesn't decompose into your soil. And then next spring, kind of keep an eye on it. And then know that in June, monsoons are just around the corner. So I would start spraying it just as a preventative for the monsoon season. And then we'll just hope for rain.
What does
Yeah.
it look like when you have fungicide or fungus on your plant?
Do you?
Is it just like leaves and
Orangish yellow, is that right?
orangish yellow?
Okay, so this isn't a fungus, but
It's
now, hold on. I saw leaves in one of these trees. Give me a second.
does it have the dots on it or something?
Yeah, there's
Just like
speckles.
speckles? Okay.
Speckles are on the leaves. There's holes also. So there's all sorts of different types of fungal issues. Black spot, aspens and things like that. Red tip photinias will have it. The speckles are more shot hole type stuff. Once you start seeing it, unfortunately, the leaves that have the fungal issue, they have it. So it's not going to change. It's not going to get better. What we're protecting is any new growth that's coming on your trees or shrubs or whatever.
Like your rose bushes that have the black spot, pull the leaves off and get rid of them.
Correct. So she said with your roses, if they have black spot, you can pull the leaves. And you can do that with your tree if you want to, just to make it look better, depending on the size. Obviously, if it's big, you don't want to pull all the leaves off because you still need that photosynthesis that the leaves still have. Just know that it's going to be there, and we're just protecting new growth. Is what we're trying to do. So whether you use the copper fungicide or the Revitalize, either one will work on keeping that from spreading. The nice thing about the Revitalize is that it is a soil drench. You can use it as a soil drench, so it gets into the root system and helps keep that immunity into the tree. So
Even with the rust on the geraniums too.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And should you do it now if you have the spots on there?
So her question was to do it now. I would say, yeah, if you have major issues and it still has leaves, definitely treat it. If it doesn't have leaves, you don't have anything to worry about right now. So
And
just make sure it's clean.
And if your roots, all of my roots are like my tree is here, and then rock is everywhere. So if my drip line is way out on the rocks, should I be spraying on the rocks?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm watering the rocks and spraying the rocks.
Right.
And fertilizing my rocks.
Yeah. So your rocks are your mulch, so it's okay. You know, it is what it is. But it will work its way down. As long as you don't have plastic underneath your rocks, you're good to go. Any other questions? All right. Yes.
You talked about the fertilizer. The other two options.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So we did kind of talk about fertilizer. This is our all-purpose, our 744. This is the one that has the sulfur in it. We also have a fruit and vegetable food that does not have sulfur in it. We kept the fruit and vegetable organic, so it is blood meal and bone meal and all of that stuff. Sulfur would make it inorganic, so we did not put sulfur in there. But I add sulfur to my soil because I know my pH is high, and I notice a difference when I use it and I don't. So definitely use sulfur if you're going to use it. Root and grow. Root and grow is what we use when we plant our trees and shrubs. So twice as wide, just as deep, 2/3 natural soil, 1/3 mulch. You don't want your hole too rich. So if I have really bad soil, I'm just going to add a little bit more. If your soil is too rich in that hole, your tree's not going to want to go. It's got to get used to living in the nasty stuff that we have as soil. So we just want to get it soft enough where the roots can get out and get a good start. Root and grow is our stress reducer. It gets your roots stimulated. After the hailstorm, I recommended this to a lot of people that came in that had issues with their trees and shrubs because they were damaged by the hail. All that pelting will stress your plants out a lot. And this will help re-energize it and get it going again. This also is a light fertilizer because it's only a 2-2-1. So if you have some issues, you can use this as much as you want. But typically when you plant a tree, you use it for 6 weeks. So every 2 weeks for 6, you will use this just to get those roots going. I use this when I plant my vegetable garden too. When I first get everything in, the roots are small enough, I just do it once and I'm done. I brought the African violet food for those folks that want like your poinsettias, Christmas cactus, and amaryllis. We use the African violet foods to keep those things blooming. So your Christmas cactuses, if you have them, should have little buds. I noticed mine today and they're starting to get bigger. So I'm really excited about that. But this is what I use on my plants and it works great. Anything else? Alrighty. I appreciate you coming. Thanks for joining me in this last class of the season. And we will see you next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.